The other morning, I was taking a shower and I was preparing for the day. There was nothing major going on, nothing like significant, just a regular day. And as I was like just doing my thing in the shower, I started singing this song and I was singing it kind of on repeat over and over again. And you know, the acoustics in the bathroom are always like on point. So having like a little bit of a show in the shower, singing it up. And it was almost like this part of me that does the reflection. It's like this part of you kind of like hovers and sees you. I don't know if that happens to you, but that happens to me, where I can see and observe myself. And I was like, wow, I'm singing. And it just really deeply resonated with me in the moment of how I was singing. And I was singing for no reason. That's always been a big part of me, is to hum a song, to sing a song, to give a whole like concert at random times, to bust out into singing at random times, or because I'm prompted by something that somebody said. But if you're anything like me and you've ever gone through really dark, trying, challenging seasons, then the song goes away. And the song fades. There is no song to be found. And I've always witnessed that within myself, that it's not that I go through dark periods of time a lot, but when I have gone through darker periods, they are deep and dark, and the song goes away. I realized I was singing, and it's not even that I've been in a dark season, like anytime soon. And it's not that I haven't sang prior to the other day when I was in the shower, but it just had this different feeling to it, this elevated, this energized, this expansive energy around the singing. And I always realize like I'm tapping in, I'm really expanding. Something inside of me is making its way out through song. In 2011, I went through my first experience of depression and anxiety and panic attacks. It seems like so long ago now at this point, where I had gone to a clinic. I had a cold. I had just lost my job. I literally had just lost my job. And it was a very unjust situation, but lost my job over that. Went to a walk-in clinic because I had had this cough for a really long time. And then my blood pressure was high. I was in my 20s at this point. And I know that the nurse said that my blood pressure was high. Well, I've never been told that anything's wrong with me medically, or, when you live your whole life trying to avoid being told that anything is wrong with you, period, and performing for the sake of safety, to be told by a medical professional that something was wrong was very jarring to me psychologically. I didn't realize at the time what had happened. She did my blood pressure check, did it again, told me my blood pressure was high, told me to keep an eye on it, and then sent me on my way. I just had like a virus, so there was really nothing that they could do. I was on cold medicine. The cold medicine helped raise my blood pressure. I just lost my job. That helps raise your blood pressure. And nobody explained that. She didn't explain that. I didn't ask questions because I was just more stunned at the fact that something was wrong. And when I left from the clinic, I remember walking out into the parking lot and immediately feeling like everything was just turning black. And I was literally about to black out. I made it to my car and sat in the car and was like, whoa, what's going on? And from that moment, this was in 2011, from that moment, for 365 days, I was having constant panic attacks, constant like blackout moments, severe anxiety. It was deemed general anxiety disorder, which led to depression because I couldn't live my life anymore. And so that was such a dark and trying season of a lot of transition was happening in my life. It was kind of in that place where like you're not a kid anymore, but you don't really fully feel like a full like grown up yet. Like I was married, I had a child, I had lost a lot of my friends, I was evolving into a new version of me, but it was also like that gap between like where you were to where you're going, but you're not there yet. So you're in that gap, and that gap season can feel like, whoa. And I never experienced that before. I was never aware enough to experience. I have evolved, and now I'm in this like part of my journey where things feel very unclear and unsettled, and I can't go back to where I was, but I don't know where I'm going. And so I'm just lost somewhere in between, which for me created a lot of anxiety and depression. Luckily, I did get out of there. My book, Pressing Forward, talks all about like what happened during that season and how I was able to overcome that. But then fast forward into 2020, where there was a lot going on. We had a global pandemic. My dad died. We had gone to work from home for the first time. I always worked in an office, but because of everything that was happening with the pandemic, it was exciting to be home. I didn't lose my job during that time, but I also was just like in a very high demand job. We'll leave it at that. High demand on a lot of things. And then I got pregnant. And so just a lot of big change all in a short amount of time, where life just felt so different. And after I had the baby, it was like I knew as soon as the baby was born. First of all, labor and delivery, everything went well. He was fine. I was fine. But I knew as soon as I pushed him out and he was in my arms, I knew something was not right within me. And then, of course, I'm like, well, it's because you just had a baby. Look at you. How miraculous. You've done the thing. You've brought life into the world. But I remember looking in the mirror and being like, something's just not right about me. I don't feel right. Again, a lot of hormonal stuff is happening, a new baby, lack of sleep. There was just a lot of life change. And it wasn't until like months later that I realized I was dealing with postpartum depression. Actually, I think it was about almost like a year later that I was like, what is wrong with me? I just didn't feel like myself. So anyway, now we fast forward into 2025, and I'm singing in the shower, and my baby will be 4 this year. And I am just thinking about like all the massive changes. Like a big thing for us when I was going through the postpartum depression was I told my husband, and my husband said, do you need to go get some help? And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take 2 weeks and I'm going to change everything in my life. And then after those 2 weeks, if I still feel this heaviness, this like dense feeling on top of me, I will absolutely go get some help. No shame in that. So what I did was I immediately changed things about my diet. I didn't just stop doing a bunch of stuff and then start doing a bunch of stuff. I just added in a bunch of things that I knew were really healthy for me, like eating a lot more food from the earth, like fruits, veggies, lots of fibrous stuff, drinking lots of water, getting sunshine, taking walks outside and getting that sun exposure. I reached out to pretty much anybody in my sphere that I knew who I would enjoy hanging out with and asked them to go meet me for coffee or have dinner with me or go for a walk with me. And I packed my schedule with being with people. I'm a very social person who during the pandemic was taken away from a lot of that social aspect, wasn't in an office anymore because I was pregnant and everything was kind of up in the air about, is it safe to be out? Is it not safe to be out? Is my baby going to live if my baby gets the virus? So I just continued to hunker down and stay locked down while everybody else was coming back into their lives. So as a social person, you take away the social aspect. That's definitely not good. So put the social piece back in and got physical movement in. And whether that was a walk or just some sort of light weight training, I just had a very clear and intentional plan about what I was going to do to get myself back on track. And within 2 weeks, things had changed. And I never had to go and talk to my doctor about it or get the additional support I would have if I needed to. But I wanted to just make sure, what changes could I make in my life first in order to feel better and to change the brain chemicals and give myself a different experience because I was not in a good place at all. So the other part of that is, when we were first deciding like whether we were going to move from Tennessee to South Carolina. And I believe that environment is everything. It can determine so much for you. If you're in an environment where you just don't feel alive, or you feel compressed or suppressed. Sometimes too, there's just so much history in an environment that no matter how much positive thinking you have, and no matter how much you try to elevate and shift yourself into new circles and new ways of being and new places where you want to go, it's like the old stuff is there. I always look at it like it's like a canvas that you are painting on. And, you know, if you're Bob Ross, you can make something magical happen probably no matter what. But eventually, as you put so much paint on that canvas, it just turns into like a brown, murky, like muddy looking painting that you really can't salvage. And when you get to that point, sometimes you just need a new canvas. And so that's what we looked at moving. Like, it was our new canvas, because yes, you can take the canvas, you can paint on there, you can mess up, and you can turn that part of the canvas that you messed up into a beautiful tree or some sort of landscape thing, but eventually it turns into that big mess. And then it's just having the fresh canvas sometimes just to start over. I know with my book, Pressing Forward, I had this whole draft of what I wanted to say, and then by the time it actually got to a place where we were going to publish it, I was trying to go back and like change things within the text to make it more relevant, because there was quite a gap from when I wrote it versus when it was when it got approved to be taken on by a publisher. And I just discarded the whole thing and started over, because it was going to take so much more effort to try to go through what I had already written and clean it up and change some of the ideas in there, as opposed to just like throwing it out and starting all over. And I wrote a new manuscript within 2 weeks. And so when we decided to move to South Carolina, that was a big thing for us, was just, we need to have a fresh canvas. And so now we've been here almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years this year in May, and it has been one of the best decisions of our lives. And even once we got here, I could feel like still some of that heaviness that I was working through. And I think some of that too is just like having a small child is exhausting. So I'm taking this back. I'm landing this on singing in the shower and having that song come out. And I realized that the other day when I was in the shower and I was singing, and I was like, whoa, this is like light. And this is like not, I was going to say not heavy, but I meant like light, like actually radiance, but also light, like airy. And I just had no reason to feel lifted like that, but I just did. And it let me know that the spark is there, that the season has shifted, that although the past year and a half or so, 2 years, I haven't felt like I've been in like this really dark place, but sometimes the heaviness just lingers for a little bit. And so I'm sharing all this with you today. My point of all this is to just encourage you that if you are into this new year and everybody's all new year, new me, and they're doing all the things they do every single year that they don't stick to, and you just feel a little lagging, like you're lagging behind and you don't feel motivated and you don't feel excited, or you've been in a season that just feels like you're going to be stuck in that season forever and it's not lifting. Number one, first and foremost, if you need help, there's no shame in that, and you should absolutely take the steps that are needed to invest into your health and your wellness. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but this is a pivotal moment in my life. And you'll hear me say, I have to keep me alive. And it's because I was listening to the podcast, a Joe Rogan podcast, and he had somebody on there. They were talking about Anthony Bourdain and Joe Rogan and the other guy, I can't remember his name right now, David Cho maybe. They were really good friends with Anthony Bourdain, and they were having this conversation about what amazing individual he was. And then they both got super emotional, and David Cho got really pissed off that Anthony Bourdain was so good to everybody else. He would take care of everybody. He would do anything for anybody. And he just got so angry, David Cho did, and said, and he couldn't even keep himself alive. And I remember watching it that night when I was in such a dark, dark place a few years ago, and thinking, I have to keep myself alive. Like, I have all these plans and goals and ambitions for my life, and there's so many things I want to do, and there's so much I want to give, but none of that matters if I can't keep me alive. And so that's really when I got into that place of like, I'm going to change my life in 2 weeks. I'm going to do totally different things that feel absolutely contrary to everything I am and everything I feel, to get myself out of here, because I'm so determined to keep myself alive. And if you've ever been in one of those really dark places, like really dark places, I know, and you probably know, what a slippery slope that is. So get some help if you need some help. This is like the best time to invest into yourself. Anytime is actually the best time, but invest into yourself to get some outside support. And if you don't feel that that's where you need to start, it's not like you're going to get on the internet and find some new information of what's going to make you feel amazing. We all know these answers. Like, social media and YouTube have given us so much information. Or you can even use ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, I'm feeling like crap, and I've been feeling like crap for the past 6 months. Give me 5 things I could do today. I could start today to feel better. There's no excuse for the information. We have the information. It's really in the doing. And yes, there's a time to be still, and there's a time to rest. But if you are feeling like absolute shit, this is when it's time to start doing something different. We have to start teaching the brain that we want a different outcome. So if you continue to do what you've been doing, you're going to continue to get what you've been getting. So if you want to transition into a new life, into a new experience, into a new outlook, and singing songs for no reason, we have to start moving into the things that change our brain chemicals and allow for us to see that light again. And sometimes this is not instantaneous. I think that there's so much power in doing the work, because you know it's going to give you the outcome. I think about whenever I go to lift weights, I know if I'm going to lift weights, I'm not going to see results that first day. But if I stick to my routine, I have consistency, and over time, not even a long period of time, but over time, I'm going to start to see and feel changes. I'm actually going to feel the changes first and then see them. And yet we doubt that when it comes to our mental health, that I did the work, but I didn't feel the results or see the results, and so I'm just not going to do it. Trust me, it's very similar to, eating in your calorie deficit and doing your weight training and watching your body transform. It doesn't happen on the first day, it doesn't happen on the second day, but eventually, over time, you start to feel and see those changes. The same thing is going to happen with your mental health when you start changing your thinking, changing the way you're viewing yourself, changing the way you're viewing the outside environment. I know that there's times when I am I've always wanted to be my own boss, and I work for a fantastic company in this season. And I just took a couple weeks off to be just fully present with my kids and my home life during the holiday season. And I work in such a safe environment that I was able to do all of that and really check out and come back to work and be so much more, and so much have so much more creativity because of the fact that I was able to step away for so long. But I remember a few days before the weekend, it started to dawn on me that I have to transition back into work mode. And I felt this dreadful feeling come over me. And I immediately told myself, no, we're not doing that. First of all, we still have days left of our time off. We're not going to ruin it in anticipation of what's to come. And also, I really enjoy this season of my life. And I am getting to learn all of these new things in regards to my career and the people I work with. And it's just it's an old thought and an old feeling that was creeping in of being stuck and this is not what I want right now. But telling myself, hold on, I got to drop this tea. Those on the podcast, you're going to hear me drinking. My throat's a little sore. You're going to hear me drinking tea. But yeah, I just told myself, we're not feeling this feeling right now. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time to feel all the feelings, but you also know when you're sabotaging and when to say, we're not doing that. And it really was that simple. It was to say, I'm not doing this. And then changing the action behind that, which was carry on with my day and then preparing for that transition back into work so that I could come in on my first day back and be ready to go and excited and moving forward with what the day had for me, as opposed to feeling like I'm resisting everything and I'm stuck. And, you always have a choice. And I think that when people start to feel like I don't have a choice or I'm stuck somewhere, that doom feeling starts to set in. And sometimes we're just conditioned to complain and feel doomed. And when you start to become aware of those thoughts in your mind, that they're making you feel that way, or that you have set forth thoughts that are making you feel that way, but if you set them in motion, you can also set new thoughts in motion. So anyway, I hope that this is helpful for you today. I just wanted to get on here and kick off Ignite and have my first conversation with you. And it just kept kind of spinning in my spirit that, this thing about singing in the shower, and just wanting to share with you that if you have lost your song in this season, it is not gone forever. Maybe it's trying to go find new lyrics. Maybe it needs a new melody, and it is going to come back to you. So don't feel lost in the fact that the song has disappeared. Sometimes you just need a break from the music. But the music is always there, and I know that you will have your song come back to you, because I've been there, and because I know what it feels like to be in the really dark seasons. And I also know what it feels like to hold on and feel like, is it ever going to lift? And it does. It does. And not only does it lift, but you can thrive again. You will thrive again. We go through these, even when I was coming out of my postpartum depression, I think back to 2011, to the darkest freaking season of my life. And I'm so grateful for that time. There's a few things about that season in 2011. Number one, when my dad was passing away, I would say I wrote a book called Pressing Forward. And I told myself when I was going through that season in 2011 that I was going to start writing a book about how I overcame anxiety and depression, even though I was right in the middle of it still. So I started writing a book during the time when I felt my worst. And I wrote it from a perspective of being healed and teaching others how to overcome anxiety and depression. When my dad was diagnosed with cancer and he was in his final probably hours, a couple of days or so, he started having extreme anxiety, and he had never dealt with anxiety or panic attacks. I was able to give him my book, Pressing Forward, to read while he was in the hospital. He had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do, so he read it. And then I was able to coach him through anxiety and depression while he was literally on his deathbed, just a couple of days away from passing away, and encouraging him and coaching him through anxiety, specifically anxiety. He wasn't in depression. He was in extreme anxiety. But coaching him through what anxiety is, how it's energy, how it needs to move. And when we try to stop it, it just makes it worse. So just let it flow. And how to release that anxiety. And just knowing that I was there to champion him and he wasn't in it alone. Such a huge, beautiful moment for me with my dad. And then also when I went through anxiety or postpartum depression, I know that I've been in this place before. And I know that if you come in, you go out. And the only way out is through a lot of times. And so you just have to go through this. And there are things about me in my thinking, in my beliefs, in my consciousness, there are just things about me that are going to be burnt off while I'm walking through this season of depression, anxiety, or whatever the case may be. And I knew that I won't come out of here the same person that went in. And I know that because in 2011, it was a totally different version of me who came out. And I am just so grateful for that season because of all of the growth that I've had and for the support that I had and for just knowing, I have the knowing and the experience of what it's like to go through those really dark seasons. So this will pass. And the only way out is through. And you're already on the journey. You're not, even when you feel like you're not moving anywhere, you're still on the journey. You can trust yourself, you can trust this process, and your song will come back to you. Happy New Year, everybody. I'm super excited for the podcast, the channel, all the things we're going to be talking about this year. And this is just the beginning. So hum your song, sing your song, and if you've lost your song, it's coming back.